Hey everyone, it's Sandra Scaiano here with Sandra Scaiano Web Design and Digital Brand Strategy. Um, Good to be back. I haven't been live in a while. I have been making a new space, still working on it. I really wanted to be able to stand up to be able to talk. I'm a hand talker and I do my best presentations standing up. So today I'm here to talk to you about a really important issue that's upcoming. It's called the General Data Protection Regulation. It's a privacy law that's going in effect on May 25th, and it is going to affect online entrepreneurs, people who have businesses online, or even a website. If you're an offline or a brick and mortar and you have a website and you collect data on your website. So I want to preface with saying I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I just wanted to spend some time because it is so important for people to understand that this is even happening. And I know a number of my clients have no idea that this is even happening. So it's really important for people to understand that it's going on. So I've spent a lot of time in the past few weeks taking legal seminars and really getting information from people who have pass this info down in layman's terms so that I can pass it on and share it to you. And for some of my clients, I'm working with their legal teams to create custom compliance. So I just want to give you some information at the end. If you are interested, you can always go to my website, sandrasky.com, and book a free strategy session so we can talk about how this affects you and how you can be compliant. So we're just going to dig right in. Basically, this is a new privacy law that is going to affect in the EU, so the European Union. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not in the EU, I don't do business in the EU, how does that affect me? It still does, because this privacy law is location dependent. So if you have a client in New York who travels to London for business and they go to your website and opt in for your freebie, they are covered under the GDPR since they are located in the EU at the time of the connection. So, you want to make sure that's why there's going to be different levels and different ways that people will connect. If you currently have clients who are in the EU, and you service people in that area, then you definitely need to get fully compliant. There's different levels that you can do depending on the type of business, and you can make those decisions for yourself. I'm just going to talk today about the 6 tenets of the law and kind of break down what that means to you really quick. And then I think I'm going to end up having to do another live where I break it down even more because it's so much. I mean, I didn't personally read the whole document, but it's a 216-page legalese document. So there's a lot of pieces in there. So I'm just going to go over the basic info and get started with things. So the number one thing is that data shall be processed lawful, fairly, and in a transparent manner. So what this means is from now on, everything that you're doing on your website, you need to tell people in a transparent way through your privacy policy, a cookie policy, and a terms of use policy on your website that explains what you are using their data for, why you are collecting it, what are you using it for, and what you are collecting. Now, I would say the majority of us already have privacy policies on our websites, which you should. I know any of my clients have them because I inform them that they need it, but this is going to be an alteration to your privacy policy to give more detail about what you're using the data for and why you're collecting it. And so what that's going to go into is that the data has to be collected for explicit, specific, and legitimate purposes. So this is really what is going to impact a lot of us, as we all have opt-ins, get on our mailing list, download my freebie, watch my webinar, and get on my list, things like that. We're going to really have to change that now. So there has to be a separation between the freebie opt-in and the getting on the list consent now. That's one of the biggest pieces, is that you're going to have a separate consent piece where people say, yes, I want to be on your mailing list. Whether that's a drop down, whether that's a checkbox, they need to expressly consent. You cannot say anymore, if you download this free PDF, you will automatically be on my mailing list. That's a no-go. But you are still able to offer the opt-ins, and you must offer the opt-in and deliver the opt-in, whether the person has chosen to be on your mailing list or not. But it does give us a number of points of contact. So you're allowed to, if they say they don't want to be on your mailing list, you're allowed to send them that follow-up email that delivers the freebie because you're fulfilling that contract with them. And you can use that as a point of contact to say, hey, and again, you should really be on my mailing list. I deliver all of this value. I do X, Y, and Z. I do special things just for people on my list. So you can actually use that email to get consent and then have them do explicit consent. So that's one of the biggest changes that's going to be happening here. And most of the email providers, so the MailChimps and the ConvertKits of the world, have already gone through and put things in place to help make that easier for you. But you do need to think through your process and your whole funnel. You need to think about what is happening on your site. Where is that going? Are you adding an extra landing page to put that offer in there and put that consent in there? So it is more involved than I'm just going to drop a checkbox in there. And think about how you're going to do that. And then also you have to go in and change up your email automations. You need to think about, are you going to send one email and then ask for consent? Are you segmenting your list? That's another big piece. If people are not in the EU, well, then you can still email them. So those are some things you have to think about in your whole funnel and what you're doing. And I know a lot of us as entrepreneurs have multiple opt-ins. So we're talking on multiple times to our audience. So you've got to do this for every opt-in on every page. If you do content upgrades, which are opt-ins at the end of a blog post, say I'm talking a blog post about SEO, and I say, if you want to know more about SEO, download my top 10 tips. If that's at the end of a blog post, I need to change that opt-in as well. So every point of contact for these opt-ins, every freebie, every funnel that you create needs to be updated. So, it's to May 25th. So that's by next Friday. So that's really one of the biggest things. And then you need to look at your list. So you need to look at your list and start to segment your list. You need to segment who is non-EU and who is EU. So by the 25th, you need to re-engage and get consent from anyone who is in the EU or an unknown location. Now, most email providers, so like the MailChimps and the ConvertKits of the world, can help you figure that out by IP addresses or in terms of location. So you'll have to go in and segment your list and send out a consent form to the EU people. And if they don't respond, if they're not responding with consent to your campaign, then you need to take them off your list. Technically, after the 25th, any processing of data, which is deleting even names from your list, is against the GDPR. I know it's going to take some of us longer to get compliant, and that's okay. I mean, this is really a process and there's a lot of pieces to it. So, if you're moving forward in that direction, I think you're going to be okay with that. So the other piece is going forward with your list building. Then you're going to need to determine, how are you going forward with list building with EU and non-EU audiences. So those are some things to think about in terms of segmenting and the outreach and how you're communicating to get on your list and when you are gaining that consent. So that's another piece to going forward. And there's a number of different strategies already that we've been discussing on the inside of things, of people who are trying to get compliant and figure out what are ways to do this so that you don't have a big list drop off. And there's also been a lot of talk about, is this good? Is this bad? Like, oh no, there's a lot of people who might lose a good portion of their list. But I also think that it's good to check your list every once in a while and re-engage people. So having this consent, you've probably received some of them already from EU companies. I know I have, where they're very straight up about it. It's, hey, the GDPR is coming. If you'd like to stay on my list and keep getting value and hearing from me, you got to consent. So I think it's good to have a re-engagement campaign every once in a while and keep your list active. I mean, the people who respond to that are going to be the people who open your emails and read them. So it's really going to make us have a more engaged audience. So I don't think it's all that bad, but there is an understanding piece and a timeline piece to it. Then you're going to have to, there's tools within your email marketing programs that are going to be able to help you facilitate this a little bit better. I know that, MailChimp's done a lot, and ConvertKit, just my two favorites, have done a lot to get everything up to snuff and to also make it easy for you and to help you facilitate the changes that you need to make for all of your forms and your opt-ins. So then another tenet is the data processing should be limited to what is necessary for that purpose. So, you cannot just be asking for everything. If you had a long form of, I need first name, last name, email, birthday, you're going to have to slim it down, because if you're not really needing that information, you're not to ask for it. And that even goes on the back end of things. So with your contact forms, some of the contact forms collect IP addresses. You're going to have to make sure that you're not collecting those IP addresses, because you really don't need them in terms of a contact form. So there are different things on the back end that need to be done or looked at as well. And for me, one of the things I can point out is think about all the data collection places on your website. So it's your freebie opt-in. It's at the end of a blog post. It's comments on a blog post. It's contact forms, any kind of forms. If you are saying, fill out this form to give me your info so that I can give you a call, or set up a strategy session. All of those forms need to be looked at, because those are all collecting data. And you also need to think about how you're storing that data, because one of the next tenets is about data should be kept. Data that identifies a person should not be kept for longer than necessary. So you have to think about, how long do you need this? And some of that even goes into sales information that you're keeping, or definitely email opt-ins. So maybe even you start doing every 6 months a re-engagement campaign or a clean out. So there's some pieces with that you need to think about in terms of how long you're keeping that data and what data you're collecting. So you need to kind of go through that. And a lot of us, I know, are saying, where the heck does that even live? So, we can talk about it. If you're using specific form plugins, you're going to go into those plugins and look at where that data is being kept. Of course, you're going to want to change up the forms to remove any information that you're not actually needing. And then there's some other techie pieces that you can always talk to your web designer about and have them, put a bits of code in to remove some things. Then it is, we're going to talk about cookies. And cookies, as you all may be familiar with, everyone's a shopper. I know, I just bought a pair of shoes on Zappos, and then everywhere I go, they're showing me the same pair of shoes, which I already bought. So they really need to work on that one. But cookies are basically tracking codes that follow you around. They look at where you've gone. They're embedded on websites, so they know where you've gone. They know what products you're looking at, different pieces. So we've all experienced that. And there's Google Analytics uses cookies. The Facebook ad pixel uses cookies. That's how you're able to build audiences if you have the Facebook ad pixel on your website. So the data of this has to be kept accurate, up to date, and correct. And a lot of this is going to be through that third party. So Google Analytics will have to keep this content accurate. You will have to go in and make some settings changes, and Google Analytics will be emailing you about that. But all of these third parties are working to get compliant if they're not already compliant with the GDPR. So you don't have to worry about that, but you do have to worry about the use of cookies on your website and informing people on it. And this is kind of where there's a gray area. So, it's not necessarily in the GDPR, but that's the kind of part that it's kind of gray about, because you do want to inform people that you're using cookies, and you need to get their consent on it. So you'll start seeing on websites, a cookie pop-up. So it'll either be at the top of the screen or at the bottom of the screen when you land on a website that pops up and says, this website uses cookies. We use them to track you and to blah, 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 give you a better experience, et cetera, et cetera. You can consent. If going further on this website means you consent to the use of cookies. So you can also have a cookie policy, which is like a privacy policy, and it explains how you are using cookies on your website, and it's available for people to read. It'll be in a prominent area. So right where your privacy policy is, it cannot be buried below anymore. It's got to be out and available for people. So this is the gray area. If you are enumerating in your cookie policy how you're using cookies, do you need to have a pop-up? I don't know the answer to that exactly, but I'm digging further and keeping going. But it's just something to think about. And like I said, you're going to decide for yourself how far you want to go with this, pushing yourself to get compliant. Because if you really service a lot of EU customers, or you are based in the EU, you may just want to go all in. If you're an American or United States based, and you're a local business, you really only speak to local customers, then you may say, I'm not going to do the cookie pop-up, I might do the policy. And again, that's something you'll have to determine, or you may even ask your lawyer about, and maybe even more of that information will start coming down the line the further we go. So I'll, keep you updated on that. So then the data shall not be kept that identifies a person for longer than necessary. So we talked about that. You can purge and keep things at a shorter time frame. And then the data shall be processed in a manner that ensures appropriate security. So by now, everyone should be using SSL on their website. It adds an extra layer of security. It's up in your browser. It gives you the little secure and the green padlock in your browser. So everyone should be using that for a multitude of reasons, but that SSL layer actually adds that protection in. So if you're using that, you're pretty good off. And then you should also have additional security programs, so that if you're storing data like in contact forms on your website, you want to make sure you want to do extra layers so that your website isn't hacked and that information isn't accessed by others. So you want to make sure you have that in place. But those are things that, as a good web designer, we're putting in place for our people right now, and everyone should be having. So that's good. One other area I didn't mention in all of this, I basically hit the 6 tenets, by the way, but is it a piece about sensitive data and how you need an extra layer of consent if you are collecting sensitive data. And sensitive data is religious or racial or ethnic data, political opinions, religious or philosophical beliefs, union membership, and genetic or biometric data. So gosh, that can be interpreted a number of different ways, especially in this political atmosphere we've had in the past year, and we still do. I think also some of this can come up for most of us if our business doesn't have that. I'm actually thinking of a few of my clients that I thought, is that a philosophical thing? Do I have to bring this up? And which I will, I mention it anyway, but do we have to have a bigger discussion about, is that a philosophical choice someone's making if you're asking them if they do this or they do that, and they're in the EU? So you can get down on this and get into some layers. I like to mention it because people like to do polls or quizzes and things like that, and some of that could be part of it, even if you're doing something in a fun way. So it's just something to mention and be up on. And there's a lot going on in terms of what there's a lot of chatter about getting compliant and things. So if you have questions, you can hop into the chat, ask me going forward on this. You can always hop on to my website, sandrasky.com, and have a strategy session that's specific about your business. I'm actually working with my clients now. We're doing a first come, first serve to get them compliant in time. And I've got a few who really do work with the EU and are much more international. So we're in the midst of getting compliant right now. And there's different things you can do to get compliant. You can there are templates for the privacy policy, the cookie policy, and the terms of use. There are updated GDPR templates. I can link to a few of them as well so that you can see some of the resources. But it's good to move in that direction. I have one client I'm thinking of in particular who, he's a local brick and mortar business. He's a vintage record store, but he gets people from all over the world coming to his Instagram who might go to his website. And, not that we have to go crazy, but it makes me think, gosh, we got to make sure if anyone's signing up, the double opt-in's got to be there. We've got to do these updates so that if someone signs up to your mailing list to hear about new releases or things that are going on. And that's another piece we really have to consider, is that we're all on social media. Social media is international. So when you are talking to that audience and then driving people back to your website, if someone's coming from Germany, if someone's coming from England, you are getting that traffic to your website, even though you're not really specifically talking to it, even though you might just be marketing local. You may have these visitors and someone may say, wow, I love that freebie. I want to know how to be healthy and, lose 10 pounds. So they might sign up for your opt-in. So this is just an added layer of things to get compliant. And I think there are certain places we need to start with, which are the opt-in forms and the freebies and putting up those privacy policies. Those are kind of the most accessible ways for everyone to be able to do for themselves. So awesome. Well, I want to just thank you guys. I'm probably going to dig into some more because there's a lot to go into in each of these pieces, but I just wanted to share it with you. I've kind of been living and breathing it hardcore for the past couple of weeks to really understand things. And I want to give a shout out to like my web design sisters, who we have all really come together with resources, bringing it in together to say, how are we going to figure this out for our clients? I really take it seriously that my clients have entrusted me with their businesses, and their websites are a big extension and sometimes the only extension of their business besides social media. So, I take this very seriously, that I am informed on this and I'm able to help guide them through the process and work with them. So I want to shout out to all my web designer beauty school girls. And all right, so let me know if you guys have questions. Thank you for those of you watching, joining me live. If you're watching the replay, just send me a comment so I know you're there. And definitely ask me any questions and hop on. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.